Welcome back to the Brennan Page. I'm Dwayne Page.
And this is Kyle Brennan. Today we have the luxury of speaking with Nate Irving. Nate is from Yonkers, New York, and caught at the University of Virginia from 2012 to 2014. During his time at Virginia, they made it to the College World Series, and he was selected to the All-Tournament team. In 2014, he was drafted in the 34th round to the Arizona Diamondbacks. As a coach, Nate has spent 6 seasons with the Cincinnati Reds, as a major league bullpen catcher, as a minor league hitting coach, and as a minor league bench coach. For the past 2 off seasons, Nate has been a hitting coach for Los Bravos de Margarita in Venezuela. This past offseason, Nate has joined the New York Mets and is a Double-A hitting coach. Yeah, Nate and I met back in 2019. Reyes and I were part of a pitcher-catcher coaches convention combined with a clinic for players, and Nate gave a presentation on catchers throwing, and then the following day I was with him. We were doing some receiving stance work, and Nate has a background in functional range conditioning. It's a movement certification and way of thinking. He has a background in kinesiology or exercise science, one of the two, and he has an interest in analytics and coding and some other things of the sort. But Reyes actually described Nate as a catching scientist. That was the way that he was described to me. All these New York City people know each other, but so yeah, we got to talking, and he had already been a big league bullpen catcher with the Reds, and so we were talking about that, and we had him on a couple behind the mask calls in the early renditions during COVID, and Nate and I have just kept in touch for a couple of years. We'll call after the season ends and kind of reflect, and then we'll chat once before the season starts and kind of go through our goals for the year. So I'd known that Nate would be a good guest to have on just from talking with him in the baseball mind, but also it's always good to catch up and to hear his perspective on where he's at in the season.
I really enjoyed our conversation with Nate. He's somebody I frankly could talk coaching with for hours. Grateful for the time that he was able to give to us today. Looking forward to having more conversations and getting to know what has led him to being the way that he is, because you described him the way that Reyes says that he's a catching scientist. He really seems like just a student of the game. His creativity is fascinating. His ability to make adjustments and kind of adapt to his environment is very impressive. I had a lot of fun on this episode, and I look forward to having him on. Thanks again, Nate, for being on, and enjoy the episode, guys.
It's good. It's challenging, different ways. I think adapting to a new org brings its own, challenges and all sorts of that. Just in getting to know new guys, getting to know how we run things as the Mets. I think everybody in baseball knows that spring training is one animal, but then when you get to your affiliate, that's another animal as well. And so getting all of the stuff that we want to do into play from the transition from spring training to the affiliate has been great. Challenging, but I think it's part of the process.
I feel the same. It's that transition where you have to pack everything up. You've been living out of a hotel for a month in spring training, and then you're driving up somewhere, or maybe even flying somewhere, and then you got to unpack into a hotel, unpack into a stadium, learn guys, figure out how you're doing the schedule. It's hectic. I feel like I'm just finally starting to get into a rhythm, and we're 5 or 6 weeks in.
Couldn't agree with you more. I think like in the same light, it's different for the guys too, where the spring training is such a controlled environment that you could set up whatever environment you want in spring training, but then it's a test for the guys coming out of spring training to really maintain it and how well we can set the environment for them. So I think it takes a little bit of time to get that stuff into play, but we're getting there.
Something I always wonder in regards from spring training to affiliate is how guys do maintaining or adapting their routines once they change those environments. What are some things that you notice maybe in the first couple of weeks as far as guys' routines?
Yeah, it's tough. It's going to challenge guys' self-awareness a ton, because spring training, it's the same thing over and over again. You can get into a really good routine, and the schedule never really changes. And so once you get into the season and you have a little bit more variability with like the time of day that you're playing, you have rain delays, you have road trips, you have all that stuff. It for from the coaching side, I feel like, and Kyle can probably vouch for this as well. Like it gives you a really good glimpse as to how well guys understand themselves, how well they understand, their routines and why they do their routines and what they do within those routines, and how to kind of select appropriately depending on the situation, and how well they can kind of like build their own day to prepare for the game each day. It's been interesting so far. We have like a lot of diverse guys, guys from different backgrounds, guys with different levels of experience, and so the interesting part has been kind of seeing how all the different guys operate within, the boundaries that we give them within the environment that we give them, and how we can kind of manipulate the environment to help guide the entire group in the right direction at the same time.
Yeah, something that I notice being able to coach at the Division 3 level, having some high school coaching experience and some travel coaching experiences, that early on it's easy for guys to kind of stick to that routine. And obviously, we're not making the kind of location moves that you guys are making. But what I notice about some of the better guys that I've coached throughout my years is that those guys seem to have really good discipline with sticking with their routines, and others don't. And one thing I'm curious about on top of my previous question is, when guys struggle early on, like would you say that they do a pretty good job of sticking and making some small modifications to those routines? Because I know a lot of times in my experience, guys, they struggle early on, and it's like abandon stuff, try to get a little bit more comfortable, and that can kind of snowball into some bigger issues overall instead of like sticking to those kind of routines that make them good.
Well, I think that's what we're here for, you know.
Hmm.
I think we're here as those guardrails to make sure that, you know, the car doesn't run off the tracks when things might go sour for a few games. But we're here as resources to be able to say like, okay, like you may not feel great. You're missing fastballs in the zone. Why? Let's figure out why. And then if it aligns with what your routine is supposed to help you do, then great, let's stick to it. If the why turns out to be something that might be a little bit different, okay, then let's maybe talk about either adding something small or adjusting something to better fit, what you're going through at the time or to try to help you out and move in the right direction at the time. I think the core of it remains the same. I think the core of like how guys operate within a season in terms of their preparation usually is pretty similar. I think some adjustments are maybe made on the fringes, either kind of like trimming the fat off of it or being a little bit more detailed in the preparation side of things where, your routine might include a lot of work off of machines for fastballs, right? But you're dominating fastballs within the first 3 weeks of the season. You start to see a lot of spin, and it gives you trouble the first week. Then you have a decision to make about how you want to adjust to it. You can either keep doing your fastball work, but you're probably going to see a lot of breaking balls, or you can start to incorporate little things like getting off the breaking ball machine, making it more difficult for yourself, stuff like that. So I think it forces the guys to grow. It forces the guys to like really be in tune with the game and like watch the game and kind of have an awareness of what's going on in the game, and be able to make adjustments to their routine accordingly. And I think that's like probably one of the biggest challenges of pro ball itself. It's like it's a long season. Guys are generally young. Um, and the days can string together pretty quick. Like these weeks seem like they go by so fast, especially early with like all the rain and the rainouts and the early spring. So it's, can you stay in tune with what you're seeing in the game? Can you prepare accordingly to like the environment that you're seeing in the game? And how well can you kind of manipulate that over the course of 150 games of a season?
Yeah, that's something I'm working through a couple guys with where they've been consistent at, okay, here's the thing I'm struggling with, and this is the goal I have to improve. Let's say, call it making contact with fastballs. And their routine is designed to help them with that. But it's like a couple days will go by, and hey, I'm still not hitting it, so let me try a new drill. Like the new drill might be something that kind of makes sense, like it's addressing some facet of why they might be missing that pitch, but then it's like new drill couple days, new drill couple days, and it's like
Yeah.
really would just like us to stay to your favorite one or two and just
Yeah,
get good at it instead of
yeah,
looking for the drill as the band-aid or the quick fix.
100%. I think it's like you can go the drill route too. I think guys in this day and age, especially with the prominence of social media and how much information is out there, no one ever really posts guys just getting demolished by a fastball machine and moving in and out of the zone and like demolished by a breaking ball machine where it's not always in the middle of the zone, it's not always a strike. Like, people don't like to post that stuff because it's not the flashy, perfect swing and perfect ball flight and all that stuff. Um, but I think in the same light, it's like that's where your money is made. Um, we play 150 games over the course of a season, um, but I think the challenge is being able to like get ourselves into that game mindset and game environment most frequently because like guys with fastball stuff, they can get off a fastball machine and it's usually okay. Like you don't swing and miss at a fastball when you know it's coming, right? So generally being able to challenge them with the environment of the game where it's like you don't know what's coming, you don't know if it's going to be in the zone every time. That's where you kind of can dig into the like, all right, this is why this is happening, and this is the adjustment that we may need to make accordingly. And it may not be a new drill, it may be like, hey, I need to set my sights, up and in for righties, up and away for lefties, so that I can be fastball first and breaking ball second, and I know that it's going to be in the zone, so on and so forth. And then, all right, I go off the machines and I start to train that. I think over the course of the years, probably less so on the social media side, but I think the industry has kind of grown um, more knowledgeable of like how we actually get stuff to transfer to the game, and it's usually probably not with flips and uh, things of that nature.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment there 100%. And I've talked about this on here before in regards to bringing that approach to a team too. I think in the last couple weeks of the season, when the conversations were around approach and practicing game-like scenarios for our team as an offense, I felt our offense functioned much better.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's an interesting point you make about attacking certain parts of the zone and kind of using the machine, going in and out, talking about different locations. When you're doing that kind of work, because I've had this with some hitters I've worked with in the past, are are you also kind of covering, hey, if this ball's here, like I want you to take that too? Because I think that's important as well. A lot of times I feel going off the machine with something uncomfortable like velocity fastball or something with spin, and a guy just kind of swings at everything, and I'm like, is that really a pitch you drive? Like, why are we swinging at that? So I was kind of curious what your take was on that stuff too.
Yeah, a couple things. I think Kyle can probably vouch for this at his level as well. But like the higher you get up the ladder, the harder it is to cover 17 inches across, and knees to belly button or wherever the umpires decide that the strike zone is that night.
I
Um,
have no idea where the top of the zone is.
Dude, it's all over the place. It's all over the place.
I
uh,
actually have no clue.
yeah. So, a couple of different things. I think guys when they're young, learning kind of be how to be fastball first, how to hit off of the heater, and also having an awareness of pitch profile and pitch type, movement profile, spin, velo, things of that nature, and how that plays into like, okay, if I got a guy with a 94 mile an hour fastball, but he's got 18 to 22 inches of vert, and the spin's like north of 2300, like this is going to be a fastball that gets on me. This is going to be a fastball that I have to stay above. This is also going to be a fastball that I have to push down in the zone because if I try to hit it at the top of the zone, it's going to be pretty difficult. Um, so okay, there you have your information, you have what you're going to see in the game, and then tied to it, you also have the approach. Like I want to get that fastball at my belly button or below, and there you have your practice goal. We can replicate that off a machine, we can replicate that however we want to replicate it, but it's our ability to then go and actually practice. Like, okay, I said that this fastball is good enough that I need to push it down in the zone and I need to stay above it. I need to kind of stay on like a lower line drive. let's go practice that now. And I think a lot of times, especially when you get caught up in the flow of a season and you're playing every day and stuff like that, we can kind of overlook that part of it. But it's such a crucial part of it in the kind of the spectrum of player development, because what we're trying to build is like the ability for players to recognize that and start to do those things habitually over the course of 150 games, because every pitcher is going to be different, every matchup is going to be different, every arsenal is going to be slightly different. So our ability to kind of develop the awareness within players of like, okay, this is what I got for tonight. This is how I'm going to go practice for the game and practice for the execution of what I'm trying to do in the game. I think the transfer of things that we're trying to get onto the field happens a little bit easier. And that also, it goes to say you have the things that you do regularly every day. You have your prep, you have your activation, you have your movement prep, you have your swing prep, the things that are just kind of like what you do as a hitter every single day that don't really change. You're building your swing from the ground up, you're testing it against game speed, and then, all right, now how can I start to practice what I'm going to actually try to do when the lights come on at 7 o'clock?
I think the further we get into the year and the more I'm thinking about this, the things that you had just mentioned about like, okay, what's the fastball like and where could I look in the zone and what could I try to do with it? If you had said that out loud maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, I'm not sure how many organizations would have been doing all of that. I would say most are at this point, but I think like the real value comes into, okay, you know what the pitcher is throwing and you can have some ideas on how we're going to practice it, but then like getting the player to train it in a competitive mindset that's similar to how they'll play, and then you as the coach finding ways for them to improve during that. Like that's where the separator is, I feel. Because like with all these teams that are coming into our place and we're going to other places, we're seeing okay, there's technology, guys are trying to match pitch shapes, guys have different machines and whatnot. It's like, is it gonna transfer? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
it reverts back to that, the coaching and the uh, building relationships and identifying with the player.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think I was just having this conversation with one of the opposing hitting coaches, but like we all have pretty much the same information. It's just how we use it and how we get it to the players so that they can make it actionable. It doesn't matter. Like as a coach, we can have an 80 grade game planning skill. Uh, from knowing what pitchers are trying to do and so on and so forth. But if we can't put the players in an environment where they start to understand it and also start to apply and practice it, then it is what it is. Like we need to do a better job of getting that information to the players in a way that they find it important and they find it useful, and that they can also they find it valuable to go practice it as well.
Nate, has your approach with that changed after doing a couple years in winter ball?
Yes and no. Completely different environment, completely different culture. And so I'd say we kind of started from ground zero. My first year down in Venezuela, where it's like not many people have information, period. Um, and let alone do they use it and how do they use it, stuff like that. So I think one of the coolest things about my experience down there over 2 years of winter ball was like developing a system, and developing a way that we talked about, you know, attacking pitchers. It was super simple. We didn't have a ton of information, but we had enough. We had enough to kind of understand what we maybe needed to do on a nightly basis. Like there's no TrackMan down there. There's not much of anything. So I was getting data from Mexico and different leagues around. I don't know, maybe probably the world because some guys played in Japan too. But just being able to pull out what we needed to be able to like have a game plan for each night. So when there's no TrackMan, it's like, all right, well we can look at strike percentage, we can look at swinging strike percentage. We can look at some things to kind of decide like, all right, do we need to be more aggressive today? Has the guy been attacking the zone, or is his walk rate trending up? Is his first pitch strike rate trending down? Do we need to be more disciplined to an approach? So like super simple, super kind of bare bones, but enough for us to be able to understand at least what we were going to see, and from an approach standpoint, whether we were going to need to be a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more disciplined to what we were looking for.
I mean, you've alluded to the fact that culture and environment and the situation can have influence over how you do something like this, but when we talk about like exposure and awareness being brought to the player about how they should tailor their approach, because I feel a lot of times, and I'm sure it can be the case for professional hitters as well, especially younger guys. Like how is it that you get some of this information to these guys? Like, hey, listen, when you're swinging at this pitch, you're really not making contact with it. When you're swinging at this pitch in this location, you're having a lot of success. Like, what are some strategies that you've kind of brought to approaching those kinds of guys? Because in my experience, sometimes these guys don't even know that like this pitch looks really good and they're swinging at it, but they're not doing anything good with it. And then when they swing at this pitch, they're actually able to hit it, like out of the yard and stuff like that and things of that nature. So what are some of your
Yeah.
strategies there?
So I think, and that's why I bring up kind of the self awareness of the player. Like I think a lot of our job is kind of coaching the self awareness of the player, and trying to develop that within them so that realistically they don't really need us in the long run. Obviously, there's a continuum of that, a learning continuum, a developmental continuum, um, where we might need to just refresh some ideas or just give them feedback along the way. I know one of the things that I told the group that I have here in Binghamton is like, well, part of our jobs as hitting coaches is to give you guys the best possible feedback we can possibly give you so that you guys can understand, what the game looks like from maybe our perspective or from a different perspective, whereas you can get really bogged down, in the nitty gritty pitch to pitch stuff like that when you're playing, and it's hard to kind of like remove yourself from that and see things from the top down or see things from a bigger perspective. And so part of our job is to be able to keep track of those things, understand those things, and also give feedback to the players in a way that allows them to see the full picture and then make decisions about how they want to adjust or how they want to go about things, with a larger perspective in mind.
Now, how is it that you go from the whole planning phase and preparation phase to all right, like let's go compete? Because I definitely can see I love the information. I'm somebody who likes to, with our resources available, take looks at what our guys are good at, how we're being attacked, those kinds, how specific guys are being attacked when they're at the plate, and to help them, kind of combat that or counter that, so to speak. But I definitely, I see that there can be not too much information, but in the player's mind, too much of a planning and preparation mindset. And then, like, how do you balance that with, like, all right, you got to fucking, get out there and figure it out. You got to get out there and compete.
So I think that's where like the learning and practice continuum comes into play, where I think most of the industry is pretty knowledgeable on um, motor learning and practice design, environmental design, and things of that nature. And I think at its highest level, we do a really good job we do a really good job as coaches at being able to break up the work day and being able to break up the day of preparation in a way that allows players to have time to work on their body, to have time to work on their swing, to have time to understand what they're going to need to do that night against a starting pitcher to have success, and then to be able to go and practice that. Um, it's hard to get that into play because a lot of times, I mean, I went through this as a player. You don't necessarily feel like it's the pitch that's beating you. You feel like it's you beating yourself because your swing's not in a great place, so that's what you want to work on. But the habit of being able to work on your swing, have some awareness around how you're moving, how that plays, but then also being able to prepare that night, for what you're going to see, I think is crucial because like as a hitter, I think anybody who's hit at a decently high level can know like your swing's not going to feel great night to night. It's not going to be the same night to night, and we need to be able to compete with what we have and figure out how to compete with what we have. So from a player's perspective, I went through this. If I wasn't feeling great, swing wise, and I just stayed on swing mode all day, and didn't give any stock to like, all right, this is what I got for tonight. Like I feel like I'm moving a little slow. I'm a little bit more outside the ball and on the ground in my pull side than I'd like. I'm working on it in the cage. It's not as consistent as I want, but I also know that there's a guy out there who's going to try to beat me tonight, and I have to make sure that I'm in a good spot with what I have, on the given day to be able to compete against that guy. So I think, we can draw the line between you're not going to fix your swing in a day. It's not going to be perfect every day. And we have to be able to learn how to compete with what we have. And so being able to kind of put that structure forward and have guys understand that like we'll have time in the day for everything, but at the end of the day, we have to be able to go out and. So May 10th, and my phone officially overheated in the sun in New York.
Oh shit! Damn,
That's hilarious. You're sideways right now.
Oh, am I?
Yeah.
Is this good?
Hold on, let me. Yeah, it looks okay.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah, should be all right. All right, let's make sure it's recording.
I see the icon above his name.
Well, good for you all that the weather's warm enough to overheat a cell phone.
Dude, I
didn't realize that I didn't realize that I put it directly in the sun and then it shut off, and I was like, "That's odd." And I looked and it said, "Your phone overheated." I was like, "No way!" Sick.
Dude, I got burnt so badly on Saturday. Actually, I woke up Sunday morning. I was like, my face is just torched.
I feel that.
Yeah.
Gringo. So Nate, it should. I think it should have recorded all that. We heard everything you said up until it turned off. You were just talking about Dwayne had asked you about the balance between guys like working through some adjustments and all that, but like hey, like at some point you have to go and compete and everything. And as you were talking, I just kept thinking, I was like, you're in such a unique place in Double A where guys are still like they have obvious things that they have to get better with, but they're also in a you have to perform because like the leash is running out for a lot of guys at that level. And I kept thinking I was like, you've been at the big league level in more of a catching analytic role, and then you've also been at the complex with teenagers, on the hitting side, and you're now kind of in this middle ground. So like you understand where they're coming, but you also have a very vivid understanding where they're going.
Yeah. That's been the hardest thing so far, to be honest. It feels like I've been on either side of the spectrum. I was in Double A with the Reds in 22, in kind of like a hybrid role almost, and so got to see things from a little bit bigger of a perspective. Got to be hands-on in a bunch of different ways, but the challenge so far here has been really balancing like, okay, how do we create time in the day for the necessities? How do we create time in the day for like the meat and potatoes, the body prep, the swing work, like the habitual things that guys need to do every day to continue developing on that side of things, but also balance, okay, we need to make sure that the practice environment is replicable to the game. And we need to be able to show guys why that's so important, and how kind of at the Double A level, like you can't really skate by on just working on your swing. This is, I think, probably the first level where you really get challenged to be able to hold an approach, to be able to execute a game plan, to have awareness on how people are pitching you. Because I think at this point, at least from what I've seen in Double A so far, the last time I was here in 2022, there was a ton of stuff and maybe not as much command. And from what I've seen so far, the stuff is there, maybe not as consistently elite as what it used to be, but the command and the pitchability is there now. There are a few more veteran guys in this league, guys who know how to pitch, guys who know how to, set people up within an at-bat and within a game. So, like on the other side, from the hitting perspective, we need to be able to do, the daily thing. We need to be able to work on things that we need to work on daily and create good habits. But we also need to be able to like practice the game and practice what we're going to do in the game so that becomes just as consistent as our swing work.
I'm sure that's challenging to get that to guys because you mentioned something earlier when you were talking about yourself as a player and things aren't the results are not reflecting what you desire nor what you believe is to be productive.
Hmm.
And the first thought is always like, what's wrong with my swing? And I see that
Oh,
with
always, yeah, yeah, yeah.
everybody, every hitter. It's oh, my swing, my swing, my swing. And I'm like, a lot of times it has to do with sometimes the pitcher just beats you. Sometimes he dots something that's very good multiple times in an at bat, which is uncommon, but it does happen.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of times we kind of give at bats away as hitters because we're kind of giving into a pitcher's plan or a pitcher's approach rather than making that commitment to an approach that I've established in practice with hitting coaches.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think that goes hand in hand with like the awareness of the player and our ability to help the player develop awareness around themselves and around what's happening in the game. I think if we only go to one side of that spectrum, so let's say we help the player really develop great awareness around his swing, when how his timing is, balance, direction, things about things of that nature, then that's kind of the lens through which they're going to run everything when things get off. But if we're able to create a really holistic perspective for the player of like, yes, there is your swing. You need to have awareness around that. You need to be able to like know what your best swing feels like, be able to take that and know when that feels off. But we also need to develop awareness around, okay, you crush fastballs in the first week of the season. You know, things haven't been going your way in the second week. Why is that? You were crushing first 3 games of the series. I think the 6 game series is like a really, really interesting environment for players because you're seeing the same team for 6 straight games and they can pitch you differently. And when you came in for 3 days, it got out and came back. Like it didn't really give pitchers the chance to make adjustments against an offense. And now, once you get to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they've already seen you for 3 games, especially if you're playing 6 days a week or 5 days a week, and they can make adjustments to you from how they attack you. So having the awareness around, all right, I saw a bunch of fastballs early. I did well off those. They've been starting to spin us early in the game as the week goes on. I'm probably going to need to be responsible for breaking balls early in the game. I might need to see some more breaking ball work pre-game because that's just kind of what they're attacking us with in the first 3, 4 innings. That's the kind of awareness that we are trying to develop at this level because when you get to the big leagues, you know, understanding what the starter is going to do to you, understanding how you can prepare for that efficiently is a nightly process. It's you need to be able to go in and say, all right, I got whoever. I'm thinking of the Mets game from last night, but like I got um, Matt Boyd yesterday, and tomorrow I'm gonna have Cade Horton, one of their top prospects. One's a lefty, one's a righty, completely different arsenal types. How you prepare for those guys are probably going to be very different, and so being able to like help guys understand what that process looks like alongside with all of the physical prep, I think is where like a lot of the sweet spot is.
I keep thinking about how, in order to do some of this training, a lot of it's uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Like if you've got some lefty coming in from a really low slot, throwing from like the second baseman, and it's going to come up in on the hands to a righty, and lefties are getting sliders starting, behind them. In order to practice that, like the practice isn't going to be feel good a lot of times. And there's going to be a couple rounds or even a couple days of I'm just getting carved up until I can figure it out. So it takes a lot of buy-in and trust from the player in the work and also in you in order to for them to work through those. Um, you had been with the Reds for a while, but a lot of it was in the big leagues. So when you came down to Double A, but then I'm thinking most notably when you came to the complex league, that was a new set of like a lot of fresh faces um, for you. And
Hmm.
then going to Venezuela, that's obviously everyone's new. And then now you're with a new organization, everyone's new. So through those experiences, can you talk about your process and just getting to know guys and getting some of that buy-in early because you're going to need it, especially with with this type of training and prep.
Yeah, so it's honestly what it's done for me is made me more self-aware of who I am as a coach and how I operate and kind of my beliefs, my philosophies, getting into different environments, but also having a really strong foundation of like the people that I've learned from, mentors and people that I've taken things from along the way. I've been able, or I've probably been forced into an environment where I need to kind of like really figure out what I believe in and what I feel like is really important at every level, from the complex league all the way up to, what I was able to see in the big leagues for a few years. Um, the challenge has been making that come together in a way that can scale to each player um, within a group. So obviously, like Kyle, you experience this on a daily basis, but like we are both individual, like private hitting coaches, and also you know team hitting coaches at the same time. And so being able to set up systematic environments where the biggest thing that I think about now is like just the consistency of it. So like when guys come in, they kind of know what the day is going to be like, and they can operate within the day how they see best fit for themselves. But like the environment is consistent and also structured in a way that kind of emphasizes being able to perform at 7 o'clock. Um, that looked different in the complex than it did in Venezuela, and it looked different in Venezuela than it does here in Double A. At the complex, I think it basically comes down to like what you value. I think at that level and at that age group, like movement efficiency, athleticism, things of that nature, especially from the baseball side of things, is of like the utmost importance because we know as they go up the ladder, you have less time and less room for error on that side, and you need to spend more time on the actual, on like hitting skill. Um, so being able to connect with guys on that level, being able to connect with the young guys, on a level where they've been doing, baseball stuff for their entire life, and then being able to say like, hey, this is how we can make that even better. This is how, you know, understanding how your swing works can help you, do your movement prep and do your cage work and all of that stuff. And then here, kind of being able to take those principles and amplify them to a level where the player feels like they have ownership of it, and for us to be able to like give them the agency to take ownership of their work and their own careers. Venezuela was a little bit different because everything down there is just about winning, and so it's a very interesting environment where the group that I was with, we had a great group of guys. Um, we needed to get better as an offense. We needed to get more efficient, both from the movement swing side and from like the gameplay side of things. And so we did a lot of challenge work in the ways that we could. Like the first year I was down there, we didn't have a cage, we didn't have anything. It was just like side toss into a net and batting practice and go get them. So we did some really creative stuff around that just to be able to get guys the work that they needed to, and then also the game looks that they needed to in order to perform. That changed my second year where we actually kind of had a cage. We had a little mini hack machine. It was more of like a traditional, just like affiliate practice environment kind of a thing. But here at the Double A level, it's that balance between continuing to help the guys develop individually, and then also be able to put them in an environment where they learn how to practice the game on a habitual basis.
I think the ownership aspect of what you talked about is so key. I think a lot of times that when guys feel that they are part of their own process and they have ownership over it, it's a little bit easier to have some buy-in as opposed to just doing something specifically because a coach told me. And like Kyle talked about and you highlighted in your journey, going to places where you don't have a couple of people to say to a new player like, hey, you could trust Nate, like he's, like you don't really have that. What are some ways that you felt yourself like getting to know these players, these new people, these new coaches to sort of like, I mean, you talked about some of the information you brought and your ability to help these guys, but like on a conversational level, like how are you breaking into to getting to know these guys? Because that's difficult, man. I give
Yeah.
you credit. That's a difficult thing to do, to go to a new environment where you might see a guy working and you're like, man, like I could, I feel like I can get in and help this guy a little bit, but he don't even know me from a freaking hole in the wall.
hmm Yeah. So I mean, I probably didn't give that answer completely to Kyle's question, so I'll probably tie it all together now. Um, but like at the complex level, I kind of went from being a part of the big league support staff to being in Double A with the Reds and then back to the complex. So I'd kind of taken this like tiered uh, journey throughout that organization. So when I got to the complex, the messaging was more of like, okay, so we know what you have to be able to do in the big leagues. We know what you have to be able to do from a physical side. We know what you have to do, be able to have to do from a swing side, and we know what you have to be able to do from a hitting side to be able to be successful as you continue to go up the ladder. So like, what's most important for guys? Um, being able to hit the ball hard in practice, being able to challenge themselves against velocity in practice, like the real bare bones kinds of things. And that's kind of how I was able to connect with guys at that level, saying, hey, you just got here from the DR. The average fastball is 90 in the DR, 91. And when you get to the States, it's going to be 93, 94. Like that's what it is. So, you know, we know that like we've done this, you're learning this for the first time, so how can we help you continue to acclimate to this new environment of baseball that you've never seen before. I think the like the maybe the lack of language barrier personally probably helps a little bit, where I feel like I can communicate pretty well with a lot of different kinds of guys. Understanding, I think the my experience in Venezuela helped with this a ton, like understanding truly the foundation of where guys come from and like the cultural habits and things of that nature has helped vastly on the other side of things. So like after I've come back from Venezuela, being able to understand like why guys have the tendency to cling to certain things, why guys kind of revert to certain habits. That's been super helpful. So I can kind of identify that and then maybe address it in a way that doesn't seem threatening, but like, hey, bro, like I've been there. Like I've seen what guys do at academies in Latin America, and like I think that's great. I think it's great, as a foundation for your development. But you're different now. You're a couple years older. You're more mature. You're in a different environment. You're facing different challenges. You're not training for a showcase anymore. You're training for the game. And how can we, continually push you to train for the demands of the game? And then at this level, it's like, um, I did advanced work in the big leagues a little bit, and so I kind of got to see, um, the plethora and the diversity of arms in the big leagues and how they attack people. And then from the hitting side, I was really grateful to be able to see like how some really, really great hitters thought about attacking opposing pitchers. And so being able to take kind of that experience and translate it in a way that's scalable to this level, but also gives guys a kind of an idea of what they're going to face when they do get up there and how they might be able to organize their days, weeks, months, and a season in order to develop the right habits so that when they get to the big leagues, it's just hit the ground running. There's no real adjustment period. There's obviously going to be an adjustment period, but I think if we give them the environment to be able to kind of practice that before they get there, the adjustment can maybe be a little bit more efficient. And being able to like have those conversations with guys and see what they think and like be able to give them the feedback of what we see and what we have seen work for other guys, I think it kind of break down the walls and help develop that relationship more efficiently.
Yeah, the it's such a balance between like as a coach, you're thinking about where they're going, and that's different. In professional baseball, it's the goal is to get to the big leagues. You know the challenges that lie ahead, and what they things that they like non-negotiable. You have to be able to do this. You have to learn to handle this.
Hmm.
Um, but then also like keeping fresh, like what it's like in their shoes,
Hmm.
because they're concerned with, hey, I went 0 for 4 last night. And they're not thinking about, well, I actually did a couple things really well, and these things are strong suits, and I'll be okay at the next level as long as I do this, and it's okay, I'm working on it, and understanding how much time they have more or less and to make a certain adjustment, and how willing or not the organization is going to be. Like players have no idea about any of that.
Yeah.
And they're also like, to your point, especially with the Latin guys, actually by the time you get to an affiliate, it's new for everyone.
Yeah.
It's like what they're doing now is different than what they're used to, and they're trying to cling to what they know and also adjust. Uh, it's a whirlwind with the
Yes, it is.
with the amount of time that we have with guys. You'd think between, okay, we're at the park for 6-7 hours before the game starts,
Mm-hmm.
and then we play a game. Like you have all the time in the world, like and with
Mm-hmm.
all this going on, it's like you don't have enough time to do anything. It feels like.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I've definitely felt since I've gotten to Binghamton, and this is a different environment than I've ever been in. Um, when I was in Chattanooga in 22, the cage was the bullpen, and the bullpen was the cage. And we had a really small cage right by the dugout that no one really used because it was like, I don't know, 10 feet wide by 30 feet long, and it just had metal all over the place and balls flew all over the place. So, like, that was a whole challenge in itself. And I got to kind of be there in that year with like a really talented group too, like Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Encarnacion Strand. Like we had a heck of a group. And just kind of see like, okay, so we don't really have great facilities. Like we don't even have a full-time hitting cage. Like we split it with the bullpen. So like, how can we get the most um, quality work in for the environment that we have? And then obviously Venezuela, it's like I've kind of gotten used to jerry rigging everything. Like I've just kind of gotten used to making the best out of a bad situation. But now I'm in Binghamton. We have two cages. We have a full field. Like outside of the weather being pretty brutal in the first probably month or so of the season, that's really been our only environmental constraint. Is like, yeah, we may get rained out like twice a week, and we may not take BP on the field at all. So being able to kind of understand the environmental differences from a coaching side and say like, okay, well, I actually have the facilities now. I don't have to be as creative, but I actually have to apply my creativity in a different way, where it's being able to know each player at a level where we can be creative with each guy to get them to a place where their habits are big league habits. And to kind of show them like, all right, we're not going to need to do a ton of like team whatever flips on the field or this, that, and the other, but like being able to break guys up into groups based upon what they're working on or based upon, what their habits may be, and be able to structure the work for that group in a way that pushes them in the right direction and has them working on the right things and also preparing for the game. So like the facilities have been different. That's been a little bit of an adjustment just because we can actually use a lot more space now. And then being able to get the environment to the guys in a way that kind of gives them the guardrails for what we're looking for, and they can sprint down that highway as quickly as they possibly can.
It's interesting that when you talk about the different environments you've been a part of, that the consistent thing that I think you've described is your creativity and your approach to kind of finding a system that works for the group that you have in front of you. Whether it's being in Venezuela, talking about not really having a cage your first year, to having all these facilities and talking about the environment, like the creativity is what remains pretty consistent. And I think that definitely gives somebody like yourself and the other members of your staff some serious buy-in with the players, because they see from the top that you guys are finding ways to make stuff happen, finding ways to make development possible for your players. So I think that kind of, like as we talked about, like getting that buy-in with the players too, like that effort, that creativity, and that consistency in those regards definitely has given you a lot of buy-in, I would imagine, from the players that you guys are working with every day. And that fosters a really good culture. So that it's been so cool to hear you describe the your ability to get in there and be like, all right, like how do we find a way to make this happen? How do we find a way to make development happen? And being somebody who has had to take batting practice in freaking racquetball courts at the Division 3 level, and just dealing with weather up here in the Northeast too. And sometimes it's, we have our infielders playing like wall ball over in the gym with smash balls because
Hmm.
we want them to be having fun but also developing. It's just
Hmm.
it's so cool to hear that stuff's happening at the levels that you're getting to coach at too, because that adds to the ownership. And honestly, like the puzzle, like we talk about the puzzle at the place that I coach at, and we talk about trying to put that puzzle together. That's what makes it so fun for us too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hardest thing on it, honestly, for me at this level is like, I think a lot of times we kind of scale down our creativity to the environment that we're in. Um, and this environment has like forced me to scale my creativity up where like I don't have to do these weird drills on the field or like whatever, but it's like, okay, how do you actually structure a daily schedule that guys have organization and have continuity around what they're doing every day, and where you can adjust the fine-tune parts of it with whatever machine work we're doing or whatever kind of challenge work we're doing that day. Like that's the creativity in it, where it's the creativity is like how we accomplish the things daily, not by what we're doing. That's been the hardest thing for me because I've always had to be creative in what we're doing, not how we're doing it. And now it's kind of flipped where we have facilities, we have everything we need. So it's like the creativity comes in, okay, how do we identify what we're going to need to do for the game tonight? How do we practice it? And then how do we get that into the schedule based upon, whether it's raining, sunny, home, away, all that stuff. So it's challenged me in a completely different way, probably more so than I anticipated. Um, Along with the challenges of being in a new org, getting to know different guys, figuring out how what we want to do from an organizational standpoint and how we can get that into play at this affiliate with the environment that we have. So it's been a completely new challenge. It's been great. It's been a constant work in progress, and it probably will be like that until the end of the year. But that's the beauty in it, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's still early. Like you mentioned a couple times having 150 games and those things, but because we even have this over the span of like a 40 to 50 game season at the college level where
Hmm.
like we're dealing with college kids. You're dealing with similar age. Obviously, you got some older guys here working at the level that you're working at. But is it something where, all right, this is the structure. This is what we're doing on this day. This is what we're doing on this day, so on and so forth. Like, at what point are you like, all right, we need to kind of shake things up just for general interest, just out of curiosity, being somebody who doesn't work at the levels that you guys work at, have exposure to the levels that you guys have. Um, is there a point where you're like, we kind of need to shake something up just to keep that like general interest, that general creativity? Like you kind of started to talk about there a little bit, where you have everything available. Now it's like, how can I be creative with how I'm structuring something that's productive?
Yeah, so I think again, I think the creativity comes in, how we do things, not necessarily what we're doing. Where I think, um, when you're in different places, especially for me, when I've been on my own, like especially in Venezuela, like it was all about like the environment that I thought we needed to set as a hitting group. But now, we have leadership who's great. We have leadership who kind of gives us feedback and direction about what we're looking for from an organizational standpoint. Um, and our job is to be able to be creative with the players to get them to, do those things on a daily basis and build in the like be able to build the right habits. Um, so it's a different kind of creativity and it's a different kind of responsibility from like the affiliate coaching side. Um, it's something that has been really cool to kind of like dive into and figure out over the course of the first month of the year and kind of be in the fight with the guys, be in the trenches and understand, all right, it's raining. It rained yesterday. We have the field today. We got rain forecasted for tomorrow. We can't really lax on that day where we have sunshine. We got to get out there and do some really good work. We got to take advantage of the field. We got to use the cage. We got to do some different things. So, like, just kind of having your eyes on the very broad spectrum of things, and then being able to get into the cage and dive into the nitty gritty of, the swing work and the individual work with each of the players. That's kind of, I think, the challenge of it. Um, but that's also, it's what you're required to do at the big league level as well. Like you're faced with those challenges wherever you go, especially as you get up the ladder. That stuff becomes ever more important. So it's a great experience to kind of go through that and be able to like lead a group through a year, at this level where they're still developing, but they also have their eye on, developing the habits that they need to be able to put into play when they get to the big leagues.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I said, Nate, something I've wanted
Nice.
to sick, something I've wanted to ask you about between your time in the big leagues and then also, yeah, like that's a extremely demanding 2/3 of the year, and then last couple of years you've been in winter ball, so aka the off seasons have been put into that. You've also been away from. You mentioned you haven't lived in the Northeast for an extended period of time in
Mm-hmm.
8 years, I think you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I gather, most of your family's from up there.
Yeah, for the most part.
And yeah, so with being away and then also just the toll that a season takes and then having the off seasons, like how have you been um, balancing personal time or at least enough of a uh, like we need some personal time throughout the day,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
whether
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
lifting, sleeping, talking with friends, family. But as you're alluding to, if you really, really, really want to do as good of a job as you can in terms of prepping for players and making the schedule right and going to individualized deep dives, like you could spend 30 hours a day on that if you wanted. Um, so how have you, I'm sure it's a work in progress, but how have you been navigating all that?
100% a work in progress, and it's probably the thing that I need to, spend a little bit more time on in my own life. It's like figuring out how to balance all of that in the course of a day. Like I'm probably at times a little bit too much of like a baseball rat and a hitting rat. Well, I'll spend all day watching games and looking at things, looking at video, um, and the challenge for me is to be able to kind of like step away from all that and be able to kind of like coach my own perspective, and be able to reassess at times and not get so bogged down in the nitty gritty of things day to day. Um, and so I mean, it's a constant work in progress. It's different on the road than it is at home. It's different week to week, but kind of like holding for me, what's helped is like just knowing what I need to be able to like honestly perform at my best as a coach, and be able to like show up with intention and passion and like all of those things that I feel on a daily basis, but be able to like be the best version of myself every day for the guys, I think is huge. Hey guys, hold on one second. I'm getting a call from someone that I think I probably need to take. Can I log back in like 2 minutes?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, give me 1 second.
I liked your answer and the honesty you gave about trying to maintain balance and how easy it is for you. It sounds like to just want to dive into stuff, and um, you're obviously someone that loves the game and loves multiple facets of it. Where
Hmm.
whether it's watching or learning about skill development stuff or movement stuff or
Hmm.
anything, um, you mentioned something. You said that there are certain things that you need to be at your best. What are those things?
I think my ability to self-assess and my ability to have awareness for all that's going on around us at an affiliate and just in life. Um, I think when you're trying to do things at an elite level, there's a lot of things that you have to be very in tune with. Um, and for me, being able to give myself the time and space to assess all of those different uh, subjects is crucial so that I don't get bogged down in, looking at someone's swing and trying to pick that apart and figure out why they're not getting the ball in the air as much or, excuse me,
Bless you.
um, you know, not getting bogged down in, trying to figure out or trying to crack the code of the opposing pitcher for that day. Because in reality, if we're at our best, it makes it easier for us to attack the pitcher. Um, Not getting bogged down in, um, you know, uh, simple things, making sure that I have the time and space to create the environment that I really want to create for the guys on a daily basis, while also making sure things like, my health and wellness are still in check. Because we could go, you know, like you said, we could go for 25 hours every day making sure that the environment that we're trying to put together for the guys is exactly how we want it. But, if we sacrifice our well-being, um, in the course of that, then our ability to create that on a daily basis is going to suffer. So just kind of like having an awareness of everything and being able to take some time to kind of see everything for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's something I'm certainly still trying to figure out. This isn't my first time in an affiliate, but it's the first time doing it as a hitting coach, and
Hmm.
I would love to spend 3 or 4 hours a day exercising and sleep fully and
I
be on
know,
the
right?
phone with friends and whatnot. Because when I do those things and I'm spending time learning and whatnot, when I do those things, I'm awesome around players. But then at the same token, if I do all that, then from the responsibility I have to them, and then also the perfectionist within us knows
Hmm.
that like, hey, this isn't as good as it could be because
Yep.
I've been not putting what I need to into it. So it's always like you're running around feeling like you're never giving enough to everything that you should. Um, yeah, that's for me. That's it. It's just trying to figure that out. It's if I'm not training enough personally and I'm not learning and doing all these things, then I'm showing up as a shell, which is never good. But then you don't have enough time to pour everything into it. It's preaching to the choir here, but it's just what I'm going through.
No, I feel you, man. And like, it's funny. I was talking with my parents about this, but like, I haven't been able to invest a ton of time into like my own personal development probably in like 2 years or so. It's been completely based on my experience. And I think there's some merit to that too, where the experiences that I've had, I wouldn't trade for the world. Like I've had the opportunity to basically like live in a Latin American country for like almost a full year of time after 2 years, where I just kind of like packed up my bags and got on a flight and was just living in Venezuela for 5 months. So like the opportunity and experience that brought me has been something that I'll never be able to kind of like express how grateful I am for. But in the same light, I'm learning things now and I'm around people now that are pushing the edges of my own capacity as a coach for the better. And it's given me the perspective that, you know, although my experiences have been very diverse and they've been unbelievable for what they've given me, um, to get to this point, like I still have a lot to learn. I still have a lot to grow from. And that's kind of like what I'm focusing on now in the daily, like, okay, how can I continue to learn, continue to grow as a coach, continue to grow as a person, and then also be able to translate that into giving the guys that we have our affiliate at the best environment that we can every day and being able to kind of like guide them in the right direction, with everything that we have.
I think to relate it to baseball, as we seem to relate mostly, if not all things too,
Hmm.
it can be very similar to like if you're making an adjustment with a player, and if you're in the midst of a season, you might not completely change a player's timing mechanism or a striding mechanism or something like that in the middle of a season,
Hmm.
but maybe that's something that happens in the off season. That can be said for our personal development as well. Like you
Yeah.
talked about the last 2 years really being able to go through the grinder like that. Like it was for you, it was compete mode. You were on compete
Yeah.
mode for so long, and it's just maybe recognizing a time in the future where you have a little bit more time on your
Yeah.
hands to spend to dive into that personal development aspect for
Hmm.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that's something like I'm looking forward to the rest of the season, obviously, but like getting to being able to like reinvest in myself this off season. That's something that I haven't really been able to do for the last couple of years.
Yeah, and then something I tend to believe is that once we get into the end of May, maybe like June-ish, we get enough of a rhythm with everything and things get efficient enough and we learn where time should go or not, where there's some pockets that open up.
Yeah.
Um, and but the spring training in April and early May race is just trying to get everything set up and
You said it.
automated and
I
and
think that's
it's
the biggest thing. Yeah.
yeah, it's like the motivation to do all that is to spend the extra hour and a half or 2 hours on something is to like this 2 hours now will save me 5 minutes a day for the rest of the year.
100%.
And
100%.
if you do enough of those projects, then you might have like an hour and a half to yourself on the road sometimes.
Mhm.
Beyond just lifting and sleeping and whatnot. You could just be like, oh, I could chill for a little bit. I don't know if that's possible, but it feels like it can happen. So that's the goal, right?
That's been the biggest thing that we've been focused on here, like getting into play the things that we want to get into play. You know, we're kind of now approaching like the middle of May, and we'll probably have everything that we want in play, here in the next couple of weeks or so. So probably like but it's taken about a month and a half to really get things rolling. And I think that's one of the challenges, like especially when for myself, like being new in a new environment in a new organization, knowing how we want to run things, but then the other side of that is being able to get them done. And that's going to look different in every affiliate, and that's going to look different in spring training than it does at the affiliate. So, like, being able to have some malleability there and some moxie there to be able to do things in a way that scales to the rest of the organization, scales to what the players need, and also scales to like what they're going to need to do from the development side. So, I'm with you. It takes some time. I think I want everything to happen so quick. Um, but having that balance between knowing when to push and knowing when to hold, I think is kind of what makes the art of coaching the art of coaching, and that's why we're in the positions that we are.
Absolutely. So Nate, I think we are due for a postseason or a off-season recap.
Yeah, 100%.
Once the year goes through and we have some lessons to take away, and we've had a couple weeks or a month or whatever it is to sort of debrief and reflect a little bit, we'd love to have you back on and we'll chat through some
For
things.
sure,
But
man. Love it.
I appreciate your time. I know for those listening that might not get it, Mondays are off for us at the affiliate, but it really ends up being like, hey, you want to catch up on maybe some sleep, some working out, and you have 2 to 4 hours of maybe at least for prep. At least at my level, it's 2 or 3 hours of prep for the week coming up, and then you got to pack for an upcoming trip or something. So you end up just working all day. So
You know what?
for you to give us your time this morning, are grateful for. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
You got it, buddy. It's great to chat with you guys. Looking forward to the next time.
Yeah, we appreciate it. I look forward to doing a deep dive into more of what makes Nate great. Sorry, I had to.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Take care, guys. It was
All
great
right,
chatting
brother.
with you.
Yeah. See you soon.
See you, man.